Good afternoon, and welcome to the Thursday, March 14th meeting of the Energy and Environmental Conservation Committee. I'm Cynette Cavaliere, the chair, and in our tradition, I would like to have our committee members introduce themselves, and we're going to start with you, Kevin.
Hi, I'm Kevin Berry. I am a town councilman, and I'm the liaison to this committee.
Daniel Moore, I'm a committee member.
Pat Schichler, committee member.
Rygg, committee member.
Katie Rygg, committee member.
Matt Prinzing, junior planner at Town of Penfield.
Sarah Waterman, sustainability engineer, Town of Penfield.
Okay, thank you. So the first thing that I want to do is actually welcome Katie to our committee. We're very pleased to have you join us, and this gives us back to our count that we had before we lost Roseanne, so we're very happy to have you here. So our next order of business will be to do the review and approval of minutes from our February 8th meeting. They've been sent out by Matt. Do any of you have any corrections or adjustments as they were sent out? Okay, if so, can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes? Say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the second one is a standing report of the Monroe County Environmental Management Council, and it is based on the February 21st meeting, but as promised, I did have some additional notes from the January meeting that I tucked down in there. And the February meeting, our guest presentation was from Patrick Gooch, who is the Senior Associate Planner for the Monroe County, and he did a bit of a tutorial for us of what is SEEKR, which is the State Environmental Quality Review Act, SEEKRA. So he gave us a little review of the regulation and then a review of the process. I'm not going to go really into any detail. This is done by a combination of the I think the engineering department as well as the planning board, and some influence from the town board within Penfield. But at a lot of the other towns and municipalities around us, it's also included. The conservation boards also have roles with that. So we kind of have a sub-role, I think, when we do some of the reviews for some of the development projects. But we don't typically have this formal flow from that. But it was kind of interesting. The county does periodically offer training on this. So if this is something that you would be interested in learning more about, we'll make sure that that availability of that training is out there. The one thing I did want to mention from the meeting was a little bit of a miscellaneous note. And this came from the Recycling Advisory Committee, who we have a member of the Monroe County Environmental Management Council on that committee. And that was just a note that our recycling haulers are struggling with a lot of light loads, and that's coming from residents not cutting apart boxes, that they're putting boxes in whole. So they have a request that if we as residents could cut the tape on the boxes, lay them flat, kind of crush them up a little bit more, that they would appreciate it. It would make it easier for them to process it, and it would make the loads heavier and allow them to get more recycling into their trucks. The next meeting that we'll have will be March 20th, where we'll be having a discussion from the Homer Nature Center, a little bit of eclipse stuff in there. And then I did go ahead and add some additional notes from the January 17th meeting. The purpose of that meeting was, it was a joint meeting with the Recycling Advisory Committee, and the most interesting thing that I had not been able to include the last time was the purposes of the two organizations. So I think it's good to see what their plans are and how they kind of work together. Katie, just for your benefit, once you get acclimated, this is a spot that I had taken over from Daniel because of his school conflicts. So if this is something that you are interested in, we could have you flip into this as something to do. So it's kind of fun. I've enjoyed doing it, but it's also available to any of the other members if they wanted to take it on. Okay, and that's that report. So the next item will be review of required items. So do we have any town development projects to talk about?
We do not have any for review, but I will let the committee know that the parking lot at Rothfuss Park is under construction. So that's an additional parking lot, hopefully to add availability for lacrosse events there.
Okay. Do we have any requests from the town board?
Not at this time.
Okay. Do we have any clean energy community actions to review?
We do. I'll start with the Community Choice Aggregation Program. Just this week, a letter went out to residents under what's called sweeps. So any resident that has not already opted out of the program and has moved into town since between August 23 and January 24, or has had an account change. So say they dropped an ESCO or took a block off their account, those types of things. They fall under the sweeps where they are getting a letter this week or have gotten a letter this week, letting them know that they have a month or 30 days to opt out of the program if they would like to not participate. We have received a number of calls from residents, specifically because there was a typo from the printers on the opt-out letter, and our town name was spelled incorrectly. So just a small update for the group on that. We are working with Good Energy to continue updating the Penfield CCA website, just so that residents can continue to go there to see comparisons to the RG&E price for electricity supply, as well as to learn about the program, or opt in or out and up. So that's the CCA portion. Does anyone have any questions on that? Seeing none, I'll continue. Oh, go ahead.
Can I,
Yeah, please.
In the letter, does it invite residents to participate in the 100?
Yep.
Thank you.
It does. And it gives the comparison price.
Excellent, thanks.
If there aren't any other questions, I'll keep going. So we also received the application for our Tier 1 designation grant for community choice, for clean energy communities. That's basically, we reached that point value for that designation, so we are working on the grant application and looking at putting that towards charging stations in the Four Corners, because that's been something that we've been hoping to do for a number of years. Additionally, we are waiting on our application for the $50,000 grant because we also reached the Tier 2 designation, and that's just not formalized yet for the grant process. We have 3 months to complete that grant application, so the first one is due in May.
How much
Do
is
you
the
have-
tier one?
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
The Tier 1 is $10,000.
Do you have ideas for the 50,000? Are you just waiting for it?
We do have ideas for the 50,000. We are considering also putting that towards the car charging stations in the Four Corners, as that's a more expensive project because there's not currently an RG&E meter there. And some work would have to be done for the service for that. We are also considering an EV for our general fleet, not really the DPW side, but the town hall side. And we're also considering internal LED upgrades for the community center and the town hall, but to have those ones, we have to have an energy audit, which we are also in the process of setting up. And if you recall, we received grant money previously for energy audits for these two buildings.
So how do you determine what you want to use the money on? What's your process?
Well, we start by what qualifies. So we previously, for one of the grants, did plantings at Shadow Pines. That was something that the town board was very interested in because we had to take out a fair number of ash trees previously. And we wanted to long-term maintain a buffer to Atlantic. So that was just that drew on the town board's needs and hopes for the town. For that, because it was a small enough grant, we could do the trees. We did look at doing another tree project at Shadow Pines for the $10,000 grant for where we removed some trees and some buffering on the curve along Whalen Road. And that right now doesn't qualify. It would end up being like a 10 to 12 month process to get that to qualify. And we're finding that these other actions that we're considering would have a higher value or equivalent value of greenhouse gas emission reduction. So that's why we're considering the other three options. Certain grant opportunities for clean energy communities, you have to fit into like, basically you're trying to make your project fit into a square box. So there's certain regulations that you have to meet, similar to the LED upgrades that that's something that we've wanted to do for a while. We updated the lighting in both buildings, the community center and the town hall. I believe it was back in 2010 after an energy audit. But we know that the lighting in these two buildings it's becoming old and to the point of it's starting to become difficult to repair, as well as the energy efficiency difference would be valuable to the town. And then for an electric car, that's really easy. It fits in a square box for the application and it would benefit the town.
I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity to daisy chain some of the grant application / money into the climate smart community activities.
So all of those actions are actually actions that would benefit us through climate smart communities.
Good.
So by putting this grant money towards some of these activities would give more points for other grant opportunities?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
So both under clean energy
That's what you were
community-
saying, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, both under
Gotta spell
clean
it out
energy
for me.
communities as well as climate smart communities.
okay.
Yep. Does anyone have any questions on those items?
Okay.
Then that's all I have for clean energy communities today.
Climate smart communities.
Clean energy.
Clean energy.
communities.
You did write climate smart there. Oh, no, there's clean energy community. Okay, man, this agenda's a killer here. Okay.
Right?
You're right.
Yeah, no, he's got it the right way. I skipped the whole way to the bottom of
I
old
was like, do I
business.
have a different
was
agenda?
moving through the agenda.
It's just-
Okay, thanks.
Old business. A, not C, town development projects. Oh, no, wait, I'm still in the wrong place.
Town tree law.
tree
You're
law
on the old
revisions.
business.
So we're
Yeah.
having, yes, struggling with reading today. Town tree law revisions.
So I'll kind of do an intro and then pass it to Matt. Does that sound good?
Excellent. Thank you.
So Matt made a couple changes in the town tree law document based on our last committee meeting. At this point, the changes and the discussion from our last meeting has not been sent to the town board specifically because the minutes have not been approved, had not been approved prior to this meeting. So we will send those minutes along to the town board members so they can review specifically the discussion on the local tree law and potentially give feedback. And I'll let Matt go over the changes that he made.
Yeah, but to clarify
Sorry.
there, I won't send all of the minutes. It
Yes,
would just be
just-
the discussion related to, what we discussed for the town tree law.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, so we had also discussed making some changes on our end to address some of the issues of the authority section and some definitions that we felt needed to be added in order to add some clarification for what standards the director or whoever would be the authority would have to follow when maintaining, mitigating, or removing any town tree. So if we go into, because there was quite a bit of discussion of how do we, because one of the issues was the director having too much authority, or the idea that potentially they would have the, power to remove any tree without any other coordination. And so in order to emphasize the idea that this is a coordination among other departments, I changed the wording under the authority section rather than citing the Director of Public Works being the authority and having the responsibility plant, prune, maintain, remove trees. I changed that to the Department of Public Works, and I realize that this is really symbolic in nature and is just changing the language. Essentially, since the Director of DPW is the Director of the Public Works, and so he would still have the same role, I felt that changing the language to the Department of Public Works would be referred to as the Tree Department, and then having references throughout the code as the referring to Tree Department, sort of lends itself to the next section, B, under authority, where it has that coordination among town departments. And so it's not solely up to the director and his discretion. It is the tree department and the town departments that, coordinate the responsibility of the town to maintain our town trees. Is there any discussion about that change, or?
Can I share additionally, this would also kind of codify how it currently works, where it's not just the director of the DPW, it is also the Parks Department within the DPW, and that is a foreman and the workers under him. So it kind of, it expands who is actually making those decisions rather than it is just the director.
I get the piece about, and I think that was the big objections last meeting, was the director having too much, authority. But maybe if you could explain the tree department, is that it's something within Department of Public Works that?
No, it's not like we would create a sub-department within DPW. It is DPW is the tree department, and the director of DPW is the director of the tree department, essentially. So it's essentially giving the responsibility of DPW to maintain our trees and giving them the authority. As it's, I guess you could see it in kind of, if, or I don't know, I guess like, the planning board or the town board has several duties that they're assigned, and this would be assigning the duty as like the tree department. So yeah, it wouldn't be creating an entirely new department, a new department head or anything like that. It would be DPW functioning as a tree department.
And you said Parks Department is under DPW?
Yep. So the way the DPW works is there's the Director of Public Works, the Deputy Director of Public Works, and then under them, there are foremans for the different smaller departments.
So there's Parks, and what else?
There's parks, there's facilities, there's the sewer. I feel like there, highway. I can't recall if there's more right now, but I feel like there's at least one more. And I don't truthfully work with all of them as often, which is why, like, those are the departments I work with. Similar to like the town hall, and then within the town hall, there's different departments. Or the community center, there's different departments.
So conceivably, one would think Parks would have the most to do with trees, but certainly Highway could, especially if a tree fell down across the highway.
Yep. That's accurate.
And facilities, in the sense if a tree's too close to the building and the roots are getting up under.
It'd probably fall under parks in that situation.
It would, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, so here it says Public Works is comprised of animal control, facilities, and street lighting, highways, parks, and sewer. So that's that definition there, what it's comprised of. Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess my thought would be, I don't really see the point of calling it out as a tree department, because you're really just saying that Department of Public Works and their designees shall have the authority and responsibility to plant, prune, maintain, and remove trees within the guidelines of the specifications. So for me, it's just semantics to call it a tree department when it's really not. And I think it adds confusion because there isn't anything designated as a tree department in the town.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna mention as well.
I think that was your comments in there as well. So, kind of hovering over that for a minute, because I think when we describe how the authority is set, and that was within the guidelines, and we added the town arboricultural specifications, and the rest of that paragraph then. So are we more comfortable with leaving it at the Department of Public Works, knowing that we've put another layer of planning and specification in there? I mean, I think, to me, in our recollections at the last meeting, we were hoping that there would be a little bit more of a connection between the coordination among town department section and the Department of Public Works section as authority, kind of more this than when I need help, I'll tag the rest of you guys. So, I mean, I don't know, it almost feels like, I don't think we really wanted clause B to be a B. We wanted to add a little bit more of the idea that the engineering department, or if there's other relevant departments, that those would be actually called out, kind of in a support role. I don't know, did you guys have that feeling from the last time when we were talking about this, that?
I mean, I think that was my understanding with you. I think last time you specified some specific staff positions.
Yes.
And I
And
truthfully
we
was
pushed it to
kind
the
of leaning
engineering department
yes.
as a whole. Now, it does currently say all town departments. I mean, is that an actual thing to include, or are we better paring it down to?
I think it's because it says all town departments will coordinate as necessary. So that's like, it can cover kind of smaller situations where, like, say the clerk's office gets a phone call about a tree that fell down. Then they're coordinating with the DPW to have that taken care of. So I think that's why there's value in having all town departments. And I understand that that's kind of a smaller situation, but generally when we're codifying things, we're trying to cover as many of our bases as possible. At least that's the direction I've always been led with the town attorney. So I would highly recommend keeping all town departments. If you feel it's appropriate, there may be an opportunity where in section A, we can define roles a little better, if that's helpful. So like, as the town is moving towards or working on getting a town arborist, that town arborist will be coordinated with through the DPW as well as the engineering department. The engineering department puts together the RFP for that person, goes through the bid process, brings that to the town board as necessary. So that's kind of a role that the engineering department would take, as well as at whatever point it's necessary to reach out to the town arborist to coordinate them coming to a site or reviewing a project. Those would be types of things that the engineering department would also participate in. So if it's helpful to maybe specify some more interactions between departments, and we can probably work on that. If there's any language that, because I'm drawing a blank right now on that,
Yes.
that the community members could put together. I would be welcome to that.
We did spend some amount of time talking about communication, and I know I was like, well, we don't want to keep somebody, from actually doing their work because it's codified that it has to go to a citizens group, or or, not that I'm against citizens having input, but just being,
Well, and that's part of why we leaned against just having, say, sustainability engineer in there, where if I'm out sick for a week because of some crazy illness, then they can't do work for a week because
Right.
my position's not in the town hall.
Right.
That's why we lean towards doing the engineering department, if we're specifying.
and when you say all departments, one would assume that includes communications, but
Yep.
is it spelled out enough for what our concerns were last meeting? I don't know, and Daniel, you probably would speak more to that than I could.
Well, that's actually, but not a bad thing to, in that coordination section, to specifically list that as a purpose.
Communications, yeah.
Is to make sure that communications occur.
Because a lot of, some of the previous issues were things just not communicated.
So would it be valuable in section B under authority to include something along the lines of, it is the Department of Public Works' responsibility to coordinate with Communications Department for resident education or something?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Something
We
along
can-
those
something-
lines.
something-
Would that fit more the the narrative that you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Isn't one of our roles with the EECC to make residents aware of education regarding trees?
One of the roles of EECC is to educate residents on energy and environmental conservation.
Oh.
I think we were talking perhaps more about when a stand of trees was taken down, and the answer, well, they were diseased, and then people begged to differ, but there was maybe not a communication as to why,
Yes.
they had been taken down, so it was more of a notification process rather than an education piece.
And that's, I would not expect or hope for this code to educate residents on what trees exist and why and what are better to plant, that kind of thing. I would hope that this would be specifically addressing how the town maintains trees, and if the committee and the town board is looking for it to include communication on why trees are being removed or what decisions are being made, that we would go in that direction.
I would say that.
So I'm a little confused by the wording
Yeah.
of B right now. It says that coordination among the departments, all town departments will coordinate as necessary with the tree department or whatever, Department of Public Works, to develop and review the town arboreal cultural specifications and standards of practice, the town design and construction specifications, and the town forestry plan to ensure compliance with this law. So their coordination is only in reviewing the specifications, or is there other coordination that we should be either calling out or not calling out?
For the basis of the requirements for this law, that covers it. And that covers to develop is, I feel silly explaining. Sorry, I hope I'm not, it doesn't matter. To develop would be to put together those and coordinate getting them approved by the town board. To review would both be in that development process, as well as if there's a question as to, should this tree come down, how should it be pruned? It'd be coordination in reviewing those documents to make sure that the town is meeting those expectations and those specifications.
So going back to your clerk example, the clerk would be involved in the development of the arboreal cultural specifications and standards.
If anything, they would be under the review because they would be passing on information between departments.
We should make that an additional clause involving communication, would make that a little bit more of a practicey thing as opposed to a approval review. I mean, I think that's what we're missing, is we're missing a little bit more of the active.
The application.
Yes.
My hesitation is that we're discussing essentially standards of practice, right? The
Yes.
standard of how the town communicates or how DPW communicates with residents. So is that something we really want written into the law, or is this something that would be adopted, maintained, changed in the town arboricultural specifications and standards of practice? I'm worried that if we keep writing in more and more, standards of practice into this code about communication or, mitigation efforts, if we put too much of that into the code,
Okay.
and then it needs to be changed later on, it's that, cart before the horse. Like, are we talking about these standards of practice, which we do want DPW to clarify and put into writing, but the idea that, the coordination and communication aspects of how tree work gets done, does that really get written into the code, or does it get written into our specifications and standards of practice?
I think that's a fair comment, and I would agree with that, not necessarily in the code, but how do we not lose sight of it since it is an issue? And I mean, who's going to oversee, like when the standards of practice are written up, are they written up? Have they been done?
Right.
And who is going to look at it and say, they left out this communication piece, which was something that sparked this whole business in the first place? So how can we not lose sight of that?
Ooh, it's actually in there.
Is it, okay?
Yeah.
What
So
section?
it's the definition of town arboricultural specifications and standards of practice.
Which was
What
a newer
section is it?
addition.
It's in section 4.
Okay.
So it says, standards for notifying affected residents shall be defined for each arboricultural activity.
Okay. There it is.
And that includes standards for notifying affected residents.
So essentially, rather
Okay.
than, explicitly stating how DPW is supposed to notify residents in the town code, it gets written into the town arboricultural specifications and standards of practice.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
And
that
that's not to say that there cannot be additional communications by the communications department or by the town supervisor's office. That's something that regularly happens in general, so that would be a separate item that I don't believe needs to be part of this.
Okay.
So I think the biggest thing is we're trying to address is this has been kicked back to us by the town board. And are changes in authority and responsibility with or without renaming or affiliating the Department of Public Works as a tree department, does the rest of the changes give them enough confidence that there is something more than just a single person's or a single team's decision-making involved, that there is some sort of standard behind it? And I don't know, Kevin, do you have any kind of gut feel? Are we getting closer, or is that still a wide divide?
No, it's not a wide divide. I think this is much better. And of course, I can't speak for everyone, but the general feel is that this is, much more satisfactory.
Okay.
My hope out of this discussion today, and please tell me if everybody else agrees, would be that we can update what we currently have or stay with what we currently have and include this document as is, or accepting changes with the portion of the minutes that we would be sending to the town board to review.
I think we would like that as well, to be able to do that. So
how do we get there?
So my number one thing is, I personally don't believe it helps to use tree department as an alias for the Department of Public Works. However, I do like that it talks about the Department of Public Works rather than a director, so a specific role, although the designee should have, at the time, we thought covered it. So I would kind of propose that language, if you guys are in
I'm
agreement
okay
with that.
Because I was confused a little bit by tree department, hence all my questions.
Are you comfortable with where tree department currently is we remove director, should that be Department of Public Works? Just,
Yeah.
I'm
Yes,
asking
just-
to confirm so that the changes can be sent along.
I would just say the Department of Public Works or their designees here and out, get rid of the here and after part.
Yep,
And get rid of the tree department part and the director part and just say shall have the authority.
okay. And then down further, we would update where it currently says tree department.
Yes.
Is everyone?
Department of Public Works.
Yep.
For B, is there, like, that still bugs me the way it's worded. Is there a way to flip that so the Department of Public Works coordinates as necessary with all town departments? Would
Yes.
that make it sound better? Instead of saying the town departments will coordinate with, as necessary with the Department of Public Works.
I think
It
that's.
flows more like how it actually is, your way.
Our way,
Yeah.
yes,
Yes.
that way. I agree, Roy.
Yeah.
Flip that.
Okay.
Is everybody comfortable with the definition for town arboricultural specifications and standards of practice?
Can we go back to it again?
Yeah, the pretty green.
Matt, can you zoom in just a little bit? Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I like it.
I think it definitely
I
meets
think
everything
it
that we've
covers
discussed.
everything, yes.
Is there a way for a resident who objects to have their say?
So that objects with the standards or objects with a tree coming down?
I guess I'm getting ahead. I think I'm probably addressing Part C, so maybe I'll leave.
Okay. So we'll finish then real quick with town arboricultural specifications and standards of practice. Everybody agrees they're comfortable with that section as is?
Yes.
Seeing nods around. Then we can continue down.
Yes, so let's address Clause C.
Could we quickly go to the definition of town forestry plan, or can we, or is that like
It's
later?
down below. It's right there.
Do we as a committee still want to have like input of writing this? Because if that's the case, at the next page where it says the town should retain the services of a professional arborist as a consultant when producing or updating this plan, could we include like with the collaboration of the EECC or something like that? Or
I don't think it would be pertinent to put that in, as that would be a decision made by the town board separately. And
Okay.
we have made the request previously to the town board to include this committee upon review.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think there'll be any problem with that. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
But thank you for that comment.
Okay, so are we good with definitions? We'll jump back to Section 3, Clause C, interference. Is that where you were talking, Katie? Okay. Yeah, we did quite a bit of discussing on this one last month as well. So I guess we all need to kind of pay attention to what has changed in there. So our hope was that communication would occur a little bit earlier, before a tree came down, if it was of tree significance.
Well, and even similarly to how the engineering department currently, their current practice with when new sidewalks are going in, if a tree is going to be impacted on private property or within the right-of-way, we will contact that resident to make them aware of that ahead of time. I think for the arboricultural standards and practices, I think it would be valuable to include something in there of what the communication practice is with that. But I don't know if we would want to codify that communication practice, just because realistically between department heads or communications directors, I think it can change. Even between supervisors, it's changed in the past. But I do recognize it was a concern of a town board member that it's not clear what the process is for residents to reach out if they're concerned about a tree coming down, or a tree that seems like it needs to come down even, like on a property line or something like that. So I think it might be valuable, at least internally, to reach out to our communications director and see if there's a way that it can be clarified on the town website how they can reach out. I will, for the information of this committee, let you know, currently, if residents have concerns about trees, they can contact the Department of Public Works as the director of the department. They can contact the supervisor's office, and then they can also go on the town website and fill out an information request, which is kind of, they just tell what they're looking for and pick which department they feel is appropriate. Most often, if a resident has a concern about a tree being a hazard, I would highly recommend they reach out to the DPW. If they have a concern about a tree coming down that they feel should not come down or should not have come down, I would recommend they reach out to communications or the supervisor's office.
I think that in terms of policy then versus application, you're not going to know how well the policy that's been written works until it starts being applied, as to whether it can be tweaked within the wording of the code, or if it's something so outside of it to require a code change, that those are things that maybe don't happen until after the fact, or if communication's not working the way we think it should. It's part of the responsibilities of the people overseeing the different departments to say this fell down.
So it was our hope, Katie, that having the specifications and standards for practice, as well as the development of a town forestry plan, would be a better place to include language that would do a more in-depth description of what a hazard was. But with the hopes that that nobody in the town is arbitrarily taking down a tree or a branch of tree. So this is probably a little bit more protective, but also a little bit more of what actually happens probably 99% of the time. That there's been very good reasons that trees have come down, but the communication has not necessarily been available to catch up and explain that to residents. And I think that's one of our big hopes, is that happens a little bit more seamlessly.
Does that answer your question?
Does that give you more comfort? Or is there something you would like us to propose?
Is there any language that you have?
I guess maybe this comes in the standards of practice down the road, which would be, how would a resident, what is their process for saying, I have a concern with trees coming down, who do I talk to about that? And the no person shall hinder, prevent, delay piece, I mean, anyway, I guess, as long as,
Yeah, it is hard. We all picture that person hugging their tree, going, "Don't cut down my tree,"
Yeah.
But it's, I think at the same time, maybe it'll include some sort of tagging process or some sort of due diligence that's
Yeah.
done ahead of time that's included in there, but.
yeah, and I guess I'm not so worried about individual homeowners and their property. It's more the parks, we all share this
Right.
forest, and
Yeah.
I think
Well, I think going back to the recent grouping of trees, which I forget where it was, that was cut down, and they say, well, the reason was that they were diseased, and maybe a town person saying, well, they looked fine to me. It's like, well, where does the qualification come to? And that's why the arboricultural process
one.
is there, because I can say something looks fine, but where is my, and they probably do look fine. But if there's a reason, it may be, well, there's something here starting, and it's going to have a long-range effect on other trees if we don't take care of that one, that there's got to be, but if in the communication that it's explained, well, this is why, that person may very well say, oh, now I understand.
right. Okay.
And I will also share, The Parks Department does go through classes with Cornell Cooperative as well as a number of other groups to be educated on how to identify ash borer in trees, how to identify trees that are infected with ash borers. Whereas I can tell you 2 years ago, I could not tell you if a tree had ash borers in it, but now I can because they taught me that. So they are formally educated in this matter. And part of bringing in a town arborist is also to continue that education as well as to bring in someone with essentially a higher certification, formal certification, to help them make those determinations when there's questionable trees.
Maybe that's where Daniel brought up about, who's responsible for educating the public, right?
Yeah, I was going to talk about another thing, but maybe I don't know if it's right to put it in the law itself, but if there's going to be a bunch of trees cut down, people are going to start asking questions instead of say, unless giant tree, for example, but if it's a small shrub, maybe people won't care as much, but if it's 50 trees, people are going to ask questions, so that could be a policy or something where they're oh, if there's more than 10 trees being cut down, we notify this way in their own, I don't know.
And they have practices that they,
Under the standards and
Yes.
specifications.
Yes, yeah.
Or standards and practices, yeah.
but in terms of the ash borers, perhaps what Katie, we tried to do, I don't think we specified a certain number of times during the year that we do that, but to have speakers in and presentations, short, 15, 20 minutes as part of our meeting. We can decide that, that's where we take on the education piece.
I love that. That's great. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, oops, sorry.
Oh,
Intermission.
isn't that always the way?
I guess in this sense, as we go on and keep commenting, just for a path forward for how we get this copy or this draft to the town board, I'm thinking that I can, make the changes that we're discussing tonight. I'll send an email to everyone letting them know that the draft's been updated. And then we can just reply in an email whether or not we're good with this draft going. Again, it's not something that we're really just passing it on to them for further feedback. It's not,
It doesn't have to be the final draft at this point.
Exactly,
Because
yeah.
we're not sending them it to the town board as a recommendation to adopt currently.
exactly, right.
I suggest you make your email a time-bound email where you say, respond by the end of the day.
Yeah.
If you don't
Yep.
respond, it's
Right,
going.
sure, we can do
Yep.
that.
And this
don't
is
think it
just an
works.
accessibility thing, but I know we talked about it in previous meetings. But would we be able to provide the link to the town arboricultural specifications and standards of practice in the EECC website, just as a link?
Once it's created, yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And that's as well as the forestry plan. Once it's created, it can be a link on the website as well.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. So at this point, I don't think we have anything that we actually need to do as a motion. So we don't have anything really defined. So unless you think otherwise.
Can we look at, there's some other
Certainly.
changes that were made?
Certainly.
The one that I was thinking of, it talked about planting up to the border. I think it said in there somewhere. Just a question on that.
Do you remember where?
Is that section 7 by any chance, adjacent owner responsibility?
Yeah, 7, I think.
Adjacent property owners may plant, prune, maintain, remove trees up to their property line, but not beyond it? Is that what you're talking about?
Yep, that one. But my question on that is there zoning requirements for any kind of buffer along private property versus public right-of-ways? And if there is, would saying that you're allowed to plant or prune up to that border conflict with those zoning requirements?
So any zoning requirements that would fall under what I think you're talking about would be easements or, actually, yeah, easements. Specifically if there's an easement that's for sewer or, and more specifically, probably a conservation easement. And realistically, the conservation easement language specifies what you are and are not allowed to do within that area. Anything else on private property, there just aren't like buffers that they're not allowed to do anything in, unless it falls under like new development. And there's regulations in the town specifications for that, as well as review by engineering and planning departments.
Okay. Yeah, just
I
thought I'd
ask
bring it
a
up.
question?
Sure, please.
In this same section, 7B, it talks about, other trees that are not maintained or owned by the town. This law pertains to basically town-owned, town-maintained trees, and it rather than this going to the board and me shooting it back, I might as well just bring it up, that this just seems like an oddly placed outlier to this, to me.
Sure. I think the first sentence fits exactly what you're talking about. The second sentence is just specifically there to acknowledge that in this case, the DPW has the right to prune trees on the town property. So say, I don't actually know if it's true, your property is adjacent to a park and you have a tree that is overhanging the park, the town is allowed to trim the tree on the park land. So that portion of the tree overhanging, they are allowed to trim. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think at minimum, keeping the second sentence is valuable for that reason. I don't think for that reason the first sentence needs to stay.
Yeah, I think that the subject of the first sentence being the property owner, kind of,
Are you talking about B? You're
Yep.
both talking about B?
B.
yeah, complicates it.
So in actuality, would that be in a right-of-way?
A right of way or on town land. It would
Okay.
be, so it would not be a town tree by definition of town tree in this, this law. It would be a branch or tree overhanging town land. Or say like the tree is literally on the property line, then it's a little more complicated. But technically, the town has the right to work on that just as like a property owner has the right, because it's a little complicated in law.
Yeah, I agree with Kevin. I think that first sentence is out of place. It shouldn't be there.
Although it's actually part of the definition of a hazard. So that obstructs the view of traffic signs, or, that's kind of that idea that
But that,
interfere with pedestrians or view of drivers, it becomes a hazard.
I think the problem with that sentence is no property owner shall allow a tree.
Yeah,
The-
it's
I think that's where the problem is.
Personal property owner versus town tree.
Yes. And
That's the
realistically,
definition.
that sentence, starting with no property owner and ending with creating a hazard, that is actually like, that falls under civil law, so it wouldn't fall under the town.
Yeah, because I'm picturing it most often to be when you're approaching a stop sign or turning and you're trying to peer down the street and this tree is.
That portion would be something in the right-of-way. It could be, say Matt's tree is overhanging the right-of-way, my tree is overhanging the right-of-way. It'd be that type of situation.
So we
My-
need the second sentence, but not the first sentence, but I'm not sure the second sentence.
Makes sense
Makes
without?
sense without the first sentence.
I think we would need to edit it so that if an object persists, is more specified of,
If the whole thing
If-
is in civil code, if all of
the
B.
whole thing is not.
It's
So just
not.
the
Okay.
first sentence would be in civil law. The second sentence, if an object
If an obstruction.
is, if I'm going to say, if an object interferes with the pedestrians or the view of drivers, thereby creating a hazard, then the Department of Public Works shall notify the property owner to prune or remove the tree or plant. And then I would likely additionally add, or that the Department of Public Works will prune or remove the plant blocking that portion of pedestrians or drivers.
So then if you reword that sentence, it could stand without the first
Yes,
sentence.
I think we would just need to reword the second sentence so it stands
Okay.
without the first, because I agree, I don't think that we should include no property owner shall allow.
That's perfect.
Do you think we can
Thanks
work
for
on
pointing that out.
changing that part?
Yep.
Thank you.
You can really just combine the two sentences and get rid of the no
Yeah.
property owner.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get to. With so many words.
Okay. Any other notes, Roy, that you saw that you wanted to capture?
Thank you for bringing that up while you're here.
You're welcome. I always am a little tenuous on what my role should be and how involved.
Oh, we're just going to suck you in to be a full member.
And we're going to pick your brain.
No more from me, but I would say if there's any more that Kevin remembers from the interactions he's had with the board, did we address everything you think at this point?
Well, actually, I actually think that the name of it is confusing, because I think people take it more as the town's law regarding trees rather than the law regarding town trees. So when they hear things about it and what it says, they think it's going to apply to private property trees.
And we agonized over that, too.
Yeah.
The definition is pretty clear, but I don't know if we,
Would you have a recommendation
Have
for
a
a
new
different
name.
title?
Maybe, I don't know,
Maybe town-owned tree law?
town-owned and maintained trees, tree law, yeah, town-owned and maintained tree law, something like that.
a law about trees owned by.
Law regarding town trees.
It's like backwards. That'll drive
Maybe
me
we can
nuts.
workshop that in the engineering planning departments and alter the title so that it's succinct but clarify.
Sure.
Okay. Let me make a note.
Mhm.
Thanks.
Well, could you just say public tree law?
Well, then I would think it's on public property. Oh, it is,
No,
it
no,
is on public property.
but I
Yep.
would think it's just a public law,
But it-
not.
it doesn't
necessarily
specify-
Like, and I'm a public, like,
You would still have to
Yeah,
go
I
into
don't-
the law to see what a
Yeah.
public tree is. I mean, what
Yeah.
if the law actually says that all trees in the town, even if they're on private property, are public trees? So
So if you call it a town-owned tree, the whole descriptor is right up front.
I don't think so, because it doesn't, you still have to, you would have to read the law to understand what a
yeah.
town-owned tree is.
Because we talk about it being
All right.
Because this
town-owned or
law could say-
town-maintained and
Yeah.
Okay,
I think,
town right-of-way. There's like 3 categories.
okay.
I think we can talk with the town attorney, because I think that's going to matter with them. And generally, when we're reviewing code, we also work with the Director of Developmental Services, Carrie Ivers. So I think there would be value in talking to her with her experience with other towns as well.
Okay, anything else on this? Good. I think that was very valuable, so thanks, everybody, for that. Okay, next item of old business is Arbor Day celebration.
So Matt has been working to put together lawn signs for us to put out for the event, and is in the process of getting quotes for that.
I'm still waiting because we've also been in discussions with the town's, what's the
Event?
title of the, oh, the events committee,
Yeah.
yes. So the events committee has been coordinating with town staff, but also with the organizers of the EV car show to update a portion of the web page for the Arbor Day celebration, which will have all the details for both events. And as part of that, we've been kind of approving communications for that, including the yard signs. I believe the latest communication that I got was that, they didn't seem to have any issues with the sign that we had designed in-house. I had asked for some clarification on in the past when they've done yard signage where they had put them throughout town, how many signs they typically put out. We, based on the numbers from the last time, because at the last tree sapling giveaway, we had put out yard signs too. I believe that would have been 2022. We still had some of those signs. All the information was out of date, so we had to get new ones. But ultimately, based on that budget, we were looking at maybe just doing about 5 signs and putting them in areas that would be highly trafficked based on the traffic data that we have for the town. In areas like one area that seemed to make sense was the community center, but I felt that because there's not a lot of traffic along there, and if anybody is going there, they probably are going to the community center. And if you put signage in the community center, then you don't necessarily need the yard sign. So if you put signage all over the community center, then it effectively, would inform people about it. So still trying to determine exactly how many signs, then we can get the quote and start setting those out. I think the next big update would be when the actual publication on the website for the Arbor Day celebration is approved by the events committee, and then we can have that communication sent out. But yes, Roy.
2 questions. One, can you get reusable signs so you don't have to do this again and update just the things that change? And 2, will you put a QR code on it?
Yeah, there is a QR code on there. I can answer that one for sure. Reusable signs. I'd have to look and see.
We did discuss that at minimum. We started that discussion, and at this point, we haven't found a way to make it an effective sign for like people driving by and reusable right now, which is why we were looking at a lower number of signs than the town normally puts out.
Right.
Anything else about the event that we need to know about, share? I think it's still car
don't.
show proclamation.
Yep. So
Shrub-
there will be a proclamation by the town supervisor, her Arbor Day, the Mayor's Monarch Pledge, and acknowledging the sustainability elements of the EV car show and having electric vehicles.
Was there anything on Tree City USA or not yet?
That would fall under Arbor Day. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sorry.
Can the town bring the EV car?
The Bolt?
Yeah.
It's a great question. I can ask. I don't see an issue with that. I don't know if we would leave it unlocked, but we can talk details. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, the next item for review is the Climate Smart Community Review. And so we've had some of this discussion. We had the initial presentation from the resource that is provided by the state in our area.
Program coordinator, Rachel.
Program coordinator, Rachel, thank you. So I had asked Sarah to go ahead and give us just a little bit better feel for their perspective in terms of actions that have happened. A lot of these have been affiliated with the clean energy community. Just the idea of what kind of things has the town been looking at, what would be interesting, to see if we wanted to pursue this, where we would be along the process.
So there are quite a number of actions that we can take, depending how this group is interested in pursuing this. We can go through each one and discuss it. we can go through each one that I believe we've completed. We would also have to complete the documentation with our coordinator, but that the town has actually done the action. And I've marked those as done. We can go through ones that are in process or that the town is interested in, and that means that they have discussed it previously. Or we can just go through all of them. How would the committee like to review this or discuss it?
So have you guys all had a chance to open that spreadsheet and take a look at some of the names and what they are?
Yes.
My opinion is that, I looked at it, I think it's great, and I think we've got quite a few points already. But bottom line it for us, like how much work would it be to get the climate smart community designation?
My current understanding of completing the paperwork is it can take 3 months to a year to go through all of the paperwork with the coordinator and get it completed. Generally, that includes the coordinator coming to, say, the town hall and working with staff maybe once a week for some number of hours. And just what detail of information we need is what determines the timeline. My staff's bigger concern with becoming designated as a climate smart community under bronze designation, which is the lowest designation we could, would be every 5 years you have to renew that designation if you want to remain a climate smart community. Generally, staff would not recommend entering something like this if you were not going to continue being a part of it. One, it looks bad, and two, that's kind of the whole point of entering it is to stay in it. So to stay in it, every 5 years you have to continue to complete action items so that you meet the number of points required, as well as the mandatory actions. The mandatory actions, they kind of roll over. There are a lot of actions that we have already completed that we would not be able to complete again. There are lots of actions that we can complete that we haven't completed. The further you get into it, the program, the more expensive it is really to complete actions. So we would likely hope for that commitment from town board that they would continue funding or continue encouraging town staff to get grants, those types of things, so that the town could stay part of the program. But we would not recommend getting into the program if it is not the intention to stay in it and continue completing action items. So when looking at these items, please consider what can we continue to do? What can we do again? For example, Color Penfield Green is working with us to complete more community campaigns. Those are actions that we can do over and over again at this point. Does that make sense? Are there any questions on that?
So I guess my question is more about look at it this way, resources from the town required you think is going to be needed to get this and maintain it? And then not counting the budget, because that's a whole other discussion, but just internal resources to get this and do it.
So currently, it would be staff in the engineering department and within the DPW. And that's staff hours. My position specifically is part of the explanation of my position is to work on items like this. So there is already a dedicated staff member. This is not the only part of my job, so obviously it wouldn't be the only thing I work on, but there is at least dedicated staff to work on these types of things.
And you have enough capacity to do this, and the town has enough capacity to allocate resources to it?
It would just change the timeline based on my capacity. And that's part of why I say 3 months to a year.
Could the task force, there is a task force, item number 1, and it says EECC would count to help. Could community members be helping with building capacity? Or?
I don't think so, because it falls under a lot of documentation. So community members would be helping in like what you're what you have done specifically with the community campaigns as a member of Color Penfield Green. And all of the documentation that those members have done and literally provided me. So like I have folders of all of that documentation. But I don't think that community members could like go on our internal server and pull documentation, or, I mean, realistically, they wouldn't even know where it is. So those types of things, that would have to be a staff member with the coordinator. Some of the action items are just things that community members can do, like educating on compost. And then, or planting pollinator gardens for Mayor's Monarch Pledge. That's something that they've done. I think some of that can fall under this. And like Megan Meyer has literally provided me documentation from classes that she's done, or the pollinator garden that's been built at the community center, and just providing that documentation. I've been organizing it. We just pull from those files. Things that are a little more difficult are things that were done before the town's been considering climate smart communities, because the documentation is in different department folders, different types of things, and that's where it would take a little more time to gather it. And then with new actions, we would be considering climate smart communities documentation needs within that, so it's a little easier in the future. And that's what I'm doing now for all of the actions that we're working on.
So and then the benefit of this is this gets us access to matching grants.
Yes, so specifically, there's one Climate Smart Communities grant that it would give us access to. I believe that's a 50% match, so the town would put up 50% of the funds, and then the grant would give us the other 50% if we got it. It also gives us points towards other grants, and I can't specify that number at this time, but that's something along the lines of, if you can get 120 points towards that grant, maybe 5 of them are from Climate Smart Communities. If you don't meet a certain minimum of points in grants generally, like when they're doing the review, you wouldn't qualify. And then when the grant reviewers are reviewing it, if you have more points, you obviously qualify better. So that is how Climate Smart Communities can benefit in that way.
It seems to me a lot of the activities or actions are pretty easy with not a lot of investment
At this time.
at this time.
Well, once you take care of the low-hanging fruit,
You have to
then
get-
that gets us to bronze, and then at the
Yep.
end of the 5-year period, what happens?
You have to do a little bit harder
Yeah.
ones.
And that's what I mean. I just know if I was ever a town supervisor and the town had this designation and the 5-year period came up and, we come forth and say, yeah, we've decided we don't think you should do this, they're going to say, are you kidding me? Like, there's no way I'm giving that up. I'm not going to be that town.
And
So I think that's kind of a pressure to put on them to say, well, we've reached a point where now you actually have to add a body into the town planning and energy and engineering department to maintain this, and now it's a cost.
The question for me would be, what's the return on that investment? Are we doing things just for the sake of doing them, or are there tangible effects, both to the environment and the benefit of the town? That's the biggest thing I would say to consider.
Yeah.
And I think it's action dependent, right? So there's certain actions that are just educational, there's a benefit to that. And there's certain actions that actually do provide a benefit to the town that you could quantify and by action.
Right.
So there's maybe more of an investment, but you're getting more of a return on it as well. But I think the key initial benefit is access to more money essentially from the state.
And I think early on, it's easy to identify that. I think more that'll be the question to be considering at the 5-year mark. So I guess I'm asking you to anticipate that.
Well, and to clarify, the actions would be performed in the next, like if the town adopted, like went for climate smart communities right now, completed all the actions, the coordinator approved, like they got approved by the state, then the next 5 years would be the time frame to complete those actions. Because in 5 years would be when we recertify or redesignate, and probably before 5 years, staff would be working with the coordinator for this program to complete the documentation for it. So the town board would be looking at what have we done enough to become a bronze certified community? And in the next 5 years, can we do enough again to stay certified? And what's the cost to that and the
Well,
value of that?
And then being able to access grants, it's matching grants. So if it's 50,000, is the town able to say, okay, well, we'll put 50,000 towards this and match it, or however many grants are available? It's,
And are there projects that the town has for those grants? Because there could be grants, but maybe there's not a project that the town would qualify for that grant. So that's also valuable. While this committee is reviewing this program, I would recommend maybe we can put together something that quantifies or shows the value environmentally and financially for the town to be part of the program. And I would look to committee members to work on that.
So you're asking us to put together a business case for going after climate-smart communities?
If you want the town to.
I think that sounds like something that's actually pretty appropriate for us to try to do. Which is that's a work, that's something that we'll have to do, and maybe it would be worth looking at our schedule and setting up
Work group.
one of our work groups and kind of dive into that and get to understand with the Duns, how close are we to bronze? What do we need to do to get there with the things that, I do like the idea that you gave us an interested in column. Which things do you feel align with things going on in the town now that would make that workable to do?
And that the interested in column includes items that have been discussed by the town board in the past, have been discussed by the DPW, by facilities, parks, and the engineering departments, and planning. So like one of those actions is a climate action plan that's been discussed previously, that's interested in, or checked for interested in.
Yeah, I would ask that maybe, the business case is a good idea, but also just the towns in the area that have done this.
Oh, we already have a list, we can send that out.
Which would be great, but I was also going to say, can we contact them and ask them
Yeah.
what benefit they got out of the program or have?
Oh,
begun with?
absolutely. In fact, so not many of the towns have become certified in this area, so I can definitely put a list together of who has and maybe a contact for them.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay, is this something we want to take on? Just to do a little bit more of a deep dive in it?
Yeah.
Okay,
Nice logical step, I think.
okay. I think we can just make this an action item. I don't think I need to have a motion or anything to move on to that. So, okay. So we'll end that discussion for now, once again, with regards to time for the remainder of our meeting here. I do have a couple things that I managed to somehow skip over looking at my notes. Sarah, did you have an update on the arborist position and what was going on with trying to obtain that?
The engineering department is working on putting together an RFP to send to the town board.
Okay, so we do have at least some motion forward on that one. And then the second one, which I think I had agreed that we would do that when we introduced Katie to the group, is that there had been some discussion about us having an additional member to our group. And so I think we wanted to at least provide some sort of update on if that was something that was going to be in the works.
Okay, the board is actually looking at adding 2 people to the board so that there would continue to be an odd number for votes. And that is something that we are definitely looking at. It appears that there is probably a majority for that, if not a consensus. I'm not promising anything, but, it seems to be being received favorably.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. So that'll go through the same kind of loop then, that if that concept gets approved, then there would be that call out for people to apply for that position and the review of those resumes or applications.
Exactly.
Okay, good to know. Okay, then we will transition to new business, which our first thing is our upcoming events, just a little brief overview. Matt, do you want to run down those, or you just want me to do that?
No, I mean, I can.
Okay.
And this is the agenda that was posted to the website, so if anyone's accessing our agendas on the website, these have hyperlinks to all the event pages where they're available. So the Rethinking the American Lawn on March 28th at 6 p.m. And this is actually just opening, because a lot of these events are through the Parks and Rec brochure, so details about that can be found in the Parks and Rec brochure.
And the Rethinking the American Lawn is a class that will be completed. So if you want to attend, you would need to sign up through Rec.
And then the solar eclipse celebration, which is being hosted at the on April 8th, and at Harris Wayland Park from 12 to 4, and at approximately 3 p.m. is when the solar eclipse will occur. One thing that I had noted or was discussed recently is just access to the solar eclipse glasses. I know that there was an opportunity to register through the Penfield Library to get glasses, but they have already filled all their registrations for those.
Okay.
So,
Additionally, other libraries in the area are also giving out solar eclipse glasses, and not all of them are having residents register. So if you are interested in still obtaining those for free, look at bordering towns' libraries and their websites.
Okay. And then I think there's lots of other organizations that are selling them, which would benefit those organizations.
then our Arbor Day celebration, which we've discussed, and this link is to the webpage, which hasn't been updated yet, but once we have the information from the EV car show, which our communications director was passing on that, the memo which would be on the Arbor Day celebration page, was going to them for their approval, and then it would be added to our website. But yes, those details, both those events, the Arbor Day celebration and the EV car show, both on April 20th, but the two different times there, with the 10 a.m. to 12:30 for Arbor Day celebration and the EV car show extending to 2 p.m.
And those time differences are that normally we've ran out of items to give away by 12:30, so the proclamation will be near the beginning of the celebration and the car show, and then we will give away the shrubs until they run out.
And then the Earth Day program is another program through Parks and Rec, and they have the details in their brochure again, but that's April 22nd at 5 p.m.
It's a play, as I recall.
Yes, it is, yeah.
Yes, sounds fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do we have any other
I don't know,
new
is there any other new
business?
And then we'll share, so previously, we've been taking a motion to adjourn the meeting. Because it's a committee, that's not necessary. So when
Yay.
the meeting is over, Cynette can acknowledge that the meeting is ending and what time it is.
Very good.
Right.
Okay, well, given that, if there is no other business that needs to be brought forward, I declare this meeting closed, and our next meeting is April 11th.
And it's 5:54.
Oh, and it's 5:54, thank you.